Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Infinite Way where spirituality meets humanity. And I am thrilled this morning to be meeting with Dr. Eric Kelly III, who is a visionary whose work transcends the boundaries of time and culture. As one of the preeminent African American artists of the last 3 decades, Dr. Kelly has not only carved a niche in the art world, but has also been a beacon of inspiration and change. Dr. Kelly's journey in the arts is a testament to the power of creativity and resilience. His work, a harmonious blend of abstract and the impressionist, invites us to explore the depths of human experience and the complexities of our society. His unique perspective on the intersection of images and the nation state, as well as the interplay between art and humanity, challenges us to see the world through the lens of empathy and understanding. His remarkable ability to capture historical moments through the art provides us with a visual narrative that speaks volumes about our past, our present, and our future. Each and every stroke of his brush, each line of his drawing tells a story that resonates with the depths of our soul. Dr. Kelly's art is not just a display of skill and talent, it is a conversation with history, a dialogue with our collective consciousness. Furthermore, Dr. Kelly's contributions extend beyond the canvas. As the founder of the Black Business Olympics, he has also created a platform that uplifts and empowers, fostering a community where diversity, innovation, and excellence are celebrated. I welcome you, Dr. Eric Kelly III. Welcome, Dr. Kelly.
Good morning, good day, wherever you are. Like to say, first of all, thank you for taking out your time to allow me in your space to talk to your audience.
I'm so thrilled to have you here. And the first thing I saw when I saw you was how smart and how handsome you looked with the jacket. Can you share just a little bit about your jacket?
Well, as I've been painting all of my life, started at about 4 years old drawing with an ink pen. And as I began to draw and paint, I would always see the same scenarios in terms of what people wore when they painted or when they drew. And I always said to myself, I like to dress up. I like to wear suits. I like to, I like to, really, really be fashionable. So what I decided to do is just draw and paint in any clothes that I was wearing during the day. And so I ended up painting on my clothes because when you're painting, many times you're wiping the brush off, or you're going to different colors and you're drying the brush off. And so I began to, paint, use my brush, and then I just start flipping paint everywhere. And I did a couple of pieces like that. And a friend of mine by the name of James Stevens III wanted a jacket done like that, with paint on it, comedian and everything. He wanted a jacket with his name on the back and the whole bit. And so I did one of those jackets for him, and he liked it. And I did a jacket for me. So when I go out and paint, it's kind of like my uniform.
I love it. I love it. And you have something very special on this particular jacket. Do you mind mentioning it?
Well, when you talk about life and you talk about art, many times we miss what I call the lifeblood that's running through our veins. And so on this particular jacket and on a subsequent show that a digital show that I've produced is the Lifeblood, and that show shares with the audience the red dot that's on my jacket, which is the
Mm.
lifeblood of me drawing and painting. And many times we don't show up, you know, like who we are. We show up as what I call code switching, so to speak. We got to show up and say, hey, how you doing? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, all that good stuff. Instead of just showing up as our authentic self. And so in art, it allows me to be both authentic and what I call imaginary at the same time. And so the clothes that I wear are just typically, canvases, for work that I've done over the years. I'm working on a 47 feet mural right now in a collector's backyard, giant mansion and all that good stuff. And they're just excited because when I show up to give them their space in an entirely different, vacuum. And when I say vacuum, I mean when you see this piece, it's truly interesting.
It's wonderful. So there's so many questions I want to ask you. The first time I saw you paint, I saw you painting ambidextrously with your right and your left hand. Please talk to me a little bit about that skill and how it came to fruition.
Well, it's an interesting story. I was growing up, and I'm sure that I'm going to get calls. Sorry about that. I was growing up, and I wanted to play basketball. Basketball was my hobby. So, when I got to college, I was playing basketball, and the game was on the line. And I'm one of those guys that like to take the last shot, So the ball bounces across the court, and me and another guy, we was running at the ball. And when we got to the basketball, we somehow or another collided, and I went down, and I fractured my right hand. Mind,
Mm.
mind you, I was on art scholarship at the time, and this was exams weekend. That's why we were in the gym, we were preparing for exams. So, we had free time. And so I fractured my right hand. And um, the paramedics came to the university, took me to the hospital. I get to the hospital, they examine my hand. It's fractured. They wrap it up and everything, and I'm walking out the hospital. Um, I catch a cab back to my house, and then I go to my grandmother's house. And my grandmother was the one who raised me, Lobella Stancil Kelly. And so I'm there with my grandmother, and I'm talking to her, and you know, like most young people, when something traumatic happens, you're always thinking about what you can do, what's going on. And I said to Mama, I said, look, I said, I fractured my hand. When I walked in the house, she was looking at me like, what happened? And I said, I fractured my hand, and I got exams this week, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And my grandmother looked me, as she always does, with that look of wisdom and knowledge. And she says, well, you're left-handed. So all you have to do is go upstairs and practice with your left hand, and you should be able to do all your exams. And then she said that when you was a little kid, your writing left-handed looks so funny to me. I made you change to right hand, to write with your right hand. And so that's why you write with your right hand. Now, I'm an artist and I'm shocked. I'm like, what? What? Are you kidding me? You got to be kidding me, right? So I go upstairs and I practice and practice and practice and practice. And so then the next day when it was time to go to school, I go to class, and the students are laughing because I was kind of I wouldn't say a well-known guy on campus, but a lot of people on campus knew me because
Sure.
I was in advertising, and I got myself into 21 clubs so that I could learn about people and learn about advertising. I was either the vice president or publicity chairman for these groups. And so I walk into class, and they're laughing. And one of my friends said, yeah, we knew you would do something to keep you from taking your test. And I looked at my teacher was looking at me, and I looked at my teacher. I said, well, I'm gonna take my test with my left hand. I can write with my left hand. And so I did all my exams with my left hand. And once that happened, my mind was like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me, from 6 years old all the way through high school, I am actually, you know, writing with my right hand, but I'm really left-handed. And so I started working on painting with my left hand, and I was enjoying it with my left hand, and I was doing it with my right hand, and my left hand, and my right hand, and then all of a sudden, I just started doing with both hands, and it's been an interesting journey because sometimes I'll just be painting the picture with my right hand, and sometimes I'll be painting with my left hand, and you know, recently I began to do it with both hands. And I think it's very interesting because many people, when they see your work, they just see your work. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like when you see somebody that has a scar, and you ask them, how did you get the scar? How did you get the scar? And they're really not asking you, how did you get the scar? They're really asking you, what is the story behind the scar? And
Mm-hmm.
so when we begin to look at my work, I always tell people there's a story behind my work because I'm a humanitarian and I
Mm-hmm.
believe in humanality. I believe in the human race. I believe that there's only one race, and it's the human race. And in my colors, in my paintings, I paint to show that you know there's no real one race. It's all one color. And so that's been kind of my journey over the last, uh, I would say, 60 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, I love your style of painting. And you and I had a conversation about this a while back, which is, you know, what it took to bring forward the various different styles and just a moment in time. I remember being in college, and I remember when I was in college and I went to University of Massachusetts, the big painter there was Nelson Stevens, okay, who had this distinctive style of, it was like bringing a ball of string together to have a face that just formed from just this line art that he did. Talk to us a little bit about your style and how it developed and how it came to fruition. And
Well,
I understand that you transverse many styles. So,
well, many people don't understand, when you're in something that you love and that you are passionate about, and that you believe that this is your legacy, destiny, and all of those big words that many people use. And when I was a young man in high school, I was confronted by so many artists that went to my high school. We were a group of students. We all loved to draw. And I found myself in a precarious situation with most of the artists. You know, they would never want me to put my work in the contest. They would always say, we want you to judge. And so I went to my grandmother and I asked her, I said, why they won't let me put my art in the work? And they're always asking me to judge. And my grandmother would say, well, you have to understand the position that you hold. They look at you as a guy who really can see what's going on, and they want to know who's the best. And I used to say, there's nobody the best. I said, we all have our own distinct styles. And my grandmother said, that's why they want you to judge. And so as I got into my artwork, I began to look around for other artists to, I wouldn't say compare to, but to look to for inspiration, to look to for 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 art. And if you're coming from a Durham, North Carolina, the first artist that's on your lips is a guy by the name of Ernie Barnes. And
mhm.
Ernie Barnes went to Hillside High School, where I attended, And you know, he's the artist that did paintings for the Olympics in Los Angeles. He's a painter that did all of the paintings for Good Times, the television show with J.J. Walker. He's
Hmm.
also an artist that played professional football in the NFL. So all of these things in terms of history in Durham is something that loomed over all of us artists, kind of like the big shadow. And so, you know, I looked at his work, and I come from a family of individuals who always talk about, you know, create your destiny. Um, do what you do and don't copy somebody else. And so I was watching his work, and I love his elongated figures, which were just amazing to me as an artist as I grew. And so I went on a journey of looking for how I could create something that nobody else created. Um, and Ernie Barnes' work was very compelling. In some of my early works, you can see some of the similarities, not as elongated, but with that kind of flavor and flair. Um,
Hmm.
and as I continued to work, I began to look around at other artists, you know, that was pushed in front of me. You know, there were not a lot of Black artists that I saw, you know, in high school. You know, it was only until I got to college, when I got to North Carolina Central University on art scholarship. One of the things that that we did was we traveled to museums. And many people don't know, they can look up Eric Kelly Museum, as my great grandfather started a museum for me when I was 7 years old. That's another story. Maybe we get into that. Um,
Yes.
but we went to museums, and we went to a museum in Washington, D.C. I believe the exhibit was 200 years of African American art. And at that at that museum in D.C., I was walking around with my teachers and my other colleagues, and we walked into a room. And in this room was this giant mural. And this mural was done by a man by the name of Charles White. And
Mm.
my teacher immediately turned to me and said, "This looks like your work." And I was looking at this mural, and for the first time, I realized what art really was. It was somebody's interpretation of how they felt. And looking at the work, it looked like my work, and I was amazed. And so when we left that, museum and came back to Durham, North Carolina, you know, I sat down with one of my teachers, Mr. Carlisle, and I was just talking about it and talking about it. And one of the things I learned from that moment was that no art is anyone's individual art. All of it is our art. And so, you know, the Ernie Barnes flavor, the Charles White's flavor was in my head. And so I started thinking, you know, what could I do to contribute to the art world? How could I bring something to the art world that's not of somebody else's that I saw? And as I said before, there were other artists thrusting in front of me, like your Michelangelos, like your Van Goghs, like your Rubens, and some of these traditional artists. But I had not been exposed to Black artists the way that I was exposed at North Carolina Central University. And so I went on a journey of drawing and painting, and drawing and painting, and drawing and painting, and drawing and painting until one day I was asked to do a show for the Hayti Heritage Center, which is one of the oldest centers of art here in North Carolina, in Durham, North Carolina. And so their executive director, Diane Pleasure, she wanted me to do a show for the 30-year anniversary. I had opened up the Hayti Heritage Center here in Durham. I did their 10-year anniversary. Then I did their 20-year anniversary. and then I did that 30th anniversary.
Wow.
And so when I was doing the 30th anniversary, my mother came to me. She found out, I don't know how, and she came to me and she said, I know you're doing a show at the Hayti Heritage Center. And she was working on Barack Obama's campaign here in Durham. And she said, well, you have to draw 3 pictures of Barack Obama. And so, anytime my mother asked me to do something, I do. And so I took my ink pen out because that's my favorite. I do ink every now and then, but that's my favorite chore when I need to do something
Okay.
really, really intense because you can't mess up with an ink pen. If you mess up with
No,
an
you
ink pen,
can't.
it's over. And so I like that. I like that energy and I like that pressure of knowing that you can mess up with the ink pen. You have to start over. And I don't like to start over. And so I drew out 3 Barack Obamas. And so my mom, she shows back up at my home and she says, Barack Obama's going to win. He's going to be the 44th president. This is my mother. We don't even know he's
Yeah.
going to. In my mind, he's a black man running for president. I am going to vote for him regardless of how, that's what I, it might have been a little selfish, but that's what I'm going to vote for him. But I'm not
Uh-huh.
really watching the political landscape as much as, doing my art. And so
Right.
she comes in and she says, you have to do 44 pictures of Barack Obama because he's going to be the 44th president. And I said, Mom, this is not my show. This is the Hayti Heritage show. And I can ask Diane about that. Well, to tell you the quick part of the story, I have so much art until what I had planned on doing was just pulling some work off my walls and out of my studio and taking it over to Hayti and just putting it up on the walls because I knew that if people hadn't seen it, to them it's new art, but to me it's
Right.
art in the house. Okay, so
Right.
that was my deal. I had not planned on doing a whole show because it's the 30th anniversary, and it's my work, and so that's what I was going to do. And so I came into her office and I said, Diane, and I said it real low because when you don't want to do something, you're not trying to be excited. I didn't come say,
Uh-huh.
to do, I didn't want to be excited. So what I did, what I said, Diane, I said, my mama said it'd be a good show if I did 44 pictures of Barack Obama because he's going to be the 44th president. I'm real low. And she jumps out of her chair and said, that's a great idea. And now I am sitting there looking at her like, you got to be kidding me. Because what I did not understand during that time that every black woman in the world loved Barack Obama. So anything
Mhm.
about Barack was going to be amazing. And so I sat there and she says, I can't wait till you finish this show. And see, what people don't understand, as I said about the scar, you know, what's the story behind what you have to do. And so I went home and I sat there for about 2 hours in my studio. I'm a thinker. I got to think it through. I got to figure out how I'm going to do it. And I sat there and I sat there and I sat there. And then about 2 hours in, I had this epiphany. And I said, what would it be like if I drew Barack Obama 44 times, like 44 different artists drew him, as opposed to me working on just drawing him? Because once I draw him, he's drawn.
Right.
Once I do the picture and impose my style on the picture, it's a done deal. So the
Mhm.
next piece, even though it may be a different piece, it's still going to look like my style, which is that piece. And so I drew Barack Obama in as an artist, drawing in 44 different art styles, and that's what really made the show. And while I was doing it, and let's get back to the scar. Um, my time constraints for doing it had went from, you know, 3 months down to 2 months, because in my mind, I just was going to pull some stuff off the wall. And now I really have a job to do. And so what I did was, I did 44 pastels. And while I was doing the pastels, because I was doing different art in my mind, thinking about a different style to do it in, I started doing some of the work real fast because I needed to have 44 pieces. So I'm not I'm not sitting here just trying to draw. I'm just sitting here creating, I'm gonna do it this way. Boom, 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 boom. I'm gonna do it this way. And these
Mm-hmm.
pieces are 24 by 36. So they're not small little bitty pieces. They are large pieces. And so while I was drawing these, I came across a way of drawing a piece of artwork that fascinated me. It just took over. And I pulled out my paintbrush and I did a couple of pieces in painting. And it just, to me, just looked like something I had never seen before. You know, um, I discovered it by accident. It was not something I was sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to do this, this, this. And all of a sudden, this style came. And for 20 years, now this is after I did the Obama show, for 20 years after the Obama show, I have been painting in the style. So I took my show um, to Diane, to the Hayti Heritage Center. It was 44 pieces, 24 by 36 framed. You would say it was probably 30 by 40s. And I took them to her. And when she saw them, she looked at me and she said, well, I'm going to hang these. Now, many times when you do a show at her center, you the artist, in the past, me the artist, we have to, you got to hang your work, you got to be the curator, you got to be the artist, you got to be the guy that's going to do the publicity, you got to do all the press, because that's just the way it is a lot of times when you're working, you know, with galleries and galleries. And so when she saw the work, she said, no, you can go ahead and go. I am going to hang these barracks in my building. And oh my goodness, she hung the 44 in the building. She used, the great room in the front, and then she used the second great room in the side, and she hung all 44 of those pieces in, and it was just a marvelous show. We toured it in several venues in Durham, but what came out of that show was the style that I have been working in for the last 20 years. And since the pandemic has happened, I have also created um, a couple of other things that I'm doing digitally, and also painting wise, because I've created some other things in abstract. Because truly, even though I started out as a realist artist, they call it hyperrealism now. Back in the day, it just was called art. You get a pen, you get a pencil, let's go. But they changed that to hyperrealism, and I was doing realism, back in the day. And one day I was drawing a piece of myself, and I was sitting there, and I said, I can copy a picture, but is that not what a camera is doing? I can copy a picture, but is that real art? Even though I'm drawing, I'm thinking I'm just copying a picture. How can
Mm-hmm.
I take a picture that I'm copying and transform it into something that we can call art? Because many artists can copy pictures, but can you transform that picture into art? And so that's the story. That's the story of how I got to my style. And that's
That,
also that's
oh,
also
go ahead.
that's also the story of of kind of where I'm at today.
That is phenomenal. And there's so many questions I have for you. So one of the things that we have to ask about is the creativity piece. Because as adults and as we are trained in our vocations and everything else, we lose our creativity. We lose the imagination. We lose the ability to dream and just create in our minds. And so therefore it no longer transposes into the things that we do, because the things that we do become mundane. Okay. How have you been able to keep that imagination just going and like, okay, the 44 was the challenge, but that you had to tap into that, because that's when people go, oh, I'm blocked. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. Help me. Oh, I need something to break through. So talk to us a little
Well,
about that.
well, I believe that most things that we do are learned. I,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we have learned to have a block. I believe that we've learned to have a writer's block. I believe we've learned to accept the fact that, we can't think about something and do it. This is just my belief. And I also believe that when you get air in your body, when you wake up and you know your name, when you get a chance to just look at yourself or look at your now, that's motivation enough. I've never had a writer's block, I've never had an art block, because when is the last time you had an air block? I want you to think about that for a moment. When is the last time that you had an air block? You've
You
never had
don't.
you've never had an air block, right? So
No.
I I have always believed that when you get an opportunity to participate in life, participate. And so, for those out there who have learned to be to have an art block or have a writer's block or have an idea block, I challenge them to think about it for a moment. Just think about it. Why do you have a block? Just think about that part. Okay. You woke up, you got your hands, you got your mind, but why do you have a block? And to pretty much push through the idea that there's a block there. And now many people would say, well, Eric, you know, I wasn't raised like you. I don't have the same mentality that you have. These are not skill sets that I have. And what I say to that is, we are all humans. We all have emotions. We all are here. Share what you have to your audience. And that's one of the things that I talk to other artists about, is that no art is better than no one else's art. We all have fans. And your fans are going to love your work. They might not like my work, but that's okay, because we all have fans. And when you think about it from that point of view, as a writer, singer, dancer, whatever you are, it kind of changes your outcome, because now you're not here working on doing something just to be doing it, something as a fad to what you're doing. You're doing something that's coming from you, that's something that you do, that your fans embrace.
Mm, that's beautiful. And then I have to ask this question, which is that you know that I dabble in art, and I dabble in art in a couple of different ways. I love fiber arts. I love drawing. I'm one of those people, I'm a tactile person. I have to have my hands in it. And one of the things that I learned when I was drawing is that the art informs you, and it that there is a relationship. There's an energy about it. Can you talk a little bit about that as as it pertains to your work?
Well, it's amazing that you said that. And the reason I say it's amazing is because, many times when I start pieces, I don't know where it's going to end. I know in my mind, I know what I want, but the art piece is sitting there saying, okay, but how you going to get to the end. And so
Mhm.
that is the most amazing part of art. You know, just to have an idea first and say, okay, I'm going to do this idea, and then you're immersed into it, and you're not looking for examples on how to do it. You are experiencing the work just as somebody who stands before it experiencing, except for you experiencing it on a different and on a deeper level. Because at the end of the day, we are creating something from nothing. You know, we are making, because you hear the word creating and you hear the word making, and you're looking at it and you say, well, I'm making art, or am I creating art? And I say we are creating art and making it amazing. And so when I think about what I do, it's oftentimes a idea that I have in my head. And then from there, I just stop thinking about what anybody's thinking about, and I think about what I am thinking about. And I think that's a little different than what some people may say, because, you know, if somebody asks you to draw a picture or paint a picture, and then you ask them, well, how do you want me to paint it? And they tell you how they want you to paint it, then you follow those guidelines. But when you're working on something that you're thinking about, there's no boundaries, there's no rules. And that's the best part of art, no rules.
I love it. The rule is there are no rules. So, okay, we have time. I want to hear about how your grandfather created a museum for you, or is that your great grandfather you said? Will you share that story with us?
Well, you know, it was very interesting. It has really propelled me to be the man that I am. You know, my great grandfather, Henry Stamps, we call him Papa, and Henry Stamps, or Papa, walked into my bedroom, and he said, and I was staying with my grandmother at the time. My grandmother was standing in his house. He had this giant house here in Durham, North Carolina. For those who are familiar with the highway here, his house was in the middle of the highway. And when they did urban renewal and all the highways through the Black community, his house just happens to be in the middle. And so he walked into my room, and each day he would come to Scarborough Target, Scarborough Nursery School. And at Scarborough Nursery School, we would walk from Scarborough Nursery School, and we would walk past the courthouse, and we would go into the courthouse. And his thing was, every day he liked to go in the courthouse and just watch the trials. That was his thing. You got to remember, there was no TV, and no real TV in those days. I'm not even sure if we had the three channels that we had then, but there was really no real TV in those days that you watched. And so this was his activity. And so, you know, one day he came to my room, and he said, he brought these big books, and he said, I want you to be a lawyer. And I'm looking at these books, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, um, I don't want to be a lawyer. And he's like, he said, every family needs a lawyer. And my brain is like, that's not what I want to do, right? My grandmother, Lovella Stansel Kelly, and I say people's names because over the history of time, names are important, and many times we just forget the names. And when you
Mhm.
have oral history, which is what we're having now, people may say, well, who was your grandmother? What was her name? Let's look her up. Yeah, my grandmother was Lovella Stansel Kelly. We call her Big Mama. And so my mother said, she said, you know, you can do anything, but always do what you want to do. And so I'm standing there, and my great grandfather said, I want you to be a lawyer. And I don't say anything. I'm just listening. And so he hands me these books. He said, these are the books you're going to have to learn to read. And so I get the books, you know, and I take the books. He walks out the room, and these are big books. And so I'm 7, so I take the books and I design me a drawing table with the books. I get me a board and I put the books up under the board. And so I'm drawing. I'm not listening to that. And so then he comes back into my room and he says, "Where are the books?" And I say, "Well, I put them over there." He said, "I want you to be a lawyer." And at that moment was the first time that I ever said to an adult what I wanted to do. And I said to him, I said, "I don't want to be a lawyer, Papa. I want to be an artist." And he looked at me and he looked over there and he saw the table and he said, "Well, if you want to be an artist, where is your work?" And it was like he was challenging me, right? And so I went to the side of my bed and I pulled my notepad out and my papers and all of my little art stuff and I put it on the bed and I say, here's some of my work." He looked at it and then he walked out the room. And I thought I was in trouble. And
Mm.
so when he came back and he said, "Look, if you want to be an artist," and he had been in World War I or World War II, he was a traveled man. He was a pretty wealthy man, And so he said, "Then you're going to have a museum. And we're going to start by you putting your work up in the hall." And we had this long hall. Now I'm a kid now, so the hall just looked long. It may, when I
Yes.
grew up, it wasn't as long, but it was to me a long hall. And so I grabbed my papers and stuff, and I'm putting them on the wall and everything because I'm excited, you know. And he said, "We're going to start your museum." And so then he walks in and he said, "No, that's not what I'm talking about. We're not just going to stick your work on the walls." He said, "We're going to go to some museums so that you understand what a museum is." And at that moment, I didn't know what a museum was. I just was happy that I'm an artist and I'm thinking. And so he took me to some museums, took me to Washington, D.C. He took me to museums in Durham. And for the first time, I saw what a museum looked like. And so when I came back, I took everything off the walls because the thing that I saw in the museums, everything was framed. And that
Yeah.
little piece of work, they had the little piece of paper that said what it was and all that good stuff. And so my mind, I'm a kid, everything got to be framed, it's got to be on the wall. And so me and my great grandfather, we began to talk about museums. And then he said something to me that really changed my mindset on my art. And one of the reasons I have a breadth of work today, I have worked from junior high school all the way to now because of what my great grandfather said. He said to me, he said, "Don't give your work away." He said, "Only sell to collectors because collectors will keep it, they will protect it, and they will know where it is." He said, Many people will want your work and they want you to give it to them. Don't do that. Only sell to collectors." And so once he said that to me, all of my friends, all of my people, as I grew, I would always say, "Well, you're gonna have to pay for the art. I'm not giving it to you." And so it kind of got me into a space of understanding, your value. As my great grandfather's quote would be, you know, um, if you don't value your value, then your value would not be valuable. And so I I I've been doing work in my museum for ever since I was 7. You know,
Hmm.
we have works of art that is dedicated to the life works of Eric Kelly III. I say it like I'm somebody else, but it's the life works of Eric Kelly III. And you can actually see the transformation of my work when I was a kid to now. And one of the things that I talk about in art, and I think it's one of the things that many artists do that people don't understand. And I say it's the intensity that we put in our work. I can look at a piece that I did when I was 7, 8, or 9, and look at a piece that I did when I was in college and see the same intensity in that work. And to me, that is what art is all about. It's not about just drawing something. It's about
Hmm.
the life force that you put in that work that allows you to do what you do, as the pieces that you see on the wall behind me.
So you gave so many golden nuggets to those young people out there that are aspiring to be artists, to be able to stand in your truth and stand up to your grandfather and let him know that this is what you wanted to do. So many people live their lives doing what others told them to do because of the respect.
Mhm.
But it's, and what's even more amazing is that your grandfather just respected what you said and then cultivated it and didn't try to shoot it down or force something else on you. This is amazing, amazing, amazing.
Well, one of the things that I've learned over my life is this, that whatever you want to do, I don't care what it is, do it. Wherever you want to go, go. We don't get a do-over. We don't get a second chance. We don't
Mm-mm.
wake up next week and we're 6 or 7 years old. This is our life. This is our journey. This is our time. And I was fortunate enough to be in a family that believed in that. And I'm glad that you said what you said, because many of us artists, as we are growing, many times we get bad leadership because you're looking for leaders. I was always looking for leaders in terms of my work. And I remember in college, and this is just another quick story to all of the artists out there. And I want you guys and ladies to really listen to this, because this was a I would say a defining moment of understanding bad leadership can lead you down the wrong path. I was the first artist on art scholarship at North Carolina Central University. And so I had my counselor who when you go to school, you have a counselor to help you navigate through school. And so my counselor was a failed artist. It was not my fault. It was his fault. And he believed that all artists were going to be starving artists. So when I went into the room to talk to him about what I was going to do, mind you, I am the first guy on art scholarship. So what happened was I won the best artist in the state of North Carolina art award by the Durham Links. And so I got letters from other schools to come to their schools. And I was all on newspaper and TV and all these things. And I found out, because my family comes from a family of research, I found out that North Carolina Central had some of the top Black artists in the world at that time. This was pre the time where all the great artists were going to the white institutions. They were at the Black schools because that's where they could get jobs. And so I found out at North Carolina Central University that they had a ton of great Black artists there, and that's where I wanted to go. So I took my portfolio down to the school. They didn't know me, and I talked to Isabel Levitz, who was not Isabel Levitz. I can't think of the other lady, and it'll come to me in a minute. Who was the dean there? And I took my work to her, and I showed her the letters, and I said I wanted to come to North Carolina Central on art scholarship. And she said, well, we'll look at your portfolio and we'll think about it. And so a week later, I got a letter for an art scholarship there. And so I'm with my counselor, and I'm just talking about how I'm going to make money in art because I don't know. Okay. And he says to me, well, if because I wanted to be an art major. I mean, art teacher. And he says, well, if you're going to be an art teacher, you probably make about $30,000-$40,000 a year. You have 3 months off. You're probably not going to make a lot of money. So I'm like, well, I don't want to go down that route. And then I said, what other route do I have? And then he said, well, you can be a fine arts major. And they design cars and, fine arts and that whole deal. And I'm like, how much money they're going to make? He said about 30, maybe 40, maybe $50,000 a year. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go down that road. And then he said, well, you can go into advertising and write your own ticket. And so, what many people didn't know when I was having this conversation, I had opened up a company called EAW Art and Sign Company, where I was drawing on jeans and T-shirts, and that's how I made. That was my hustle. That's how I made my money. So I made about 300.
Yeah.
I made about $300 a week just drawing and carrying on. So I already understood, you know, how to make money. So when I was hearing 30 and $40,000 out, my brain was like, I'm making a good sizable amount of money now, and you're telling me that's all I'm going to make. And so I changed my major to visual communications and changed my major. And we didn't have an advertising. This is what's really wild about my journey. We didn't have an advertising program there, but visual communications was the closest thing to advertising. And so in my mind, I'm going into to to be in advertising because that allowed me the kind of money and the kind of lifestyle I thought I wanted. And I abandoned being an art teacher. Now, what should have happened was that he should have said to me, you could be an artist and you could be in art education, but you could continue to paint and become a well-known artist or become an artist. But that's not what I was told. I was told that I would become a starving artist. And so I went into advertising, and one thing I didn't do is because I'm an artist, I didn't stop drawing. Okay, so in fact, while I'm in advertising, I'm still in art education at the university. So I'm on art scholarship. Everything's free. So hey, what's the deal? I'm a kid, I'm a young guy, and I treated college like I treated high school because I enjoyed education. So behind each one of my classes, I went to the library for an hour so I didn't have to study. This is kind of how I did things. So at 5 o'clock in the day, I still was able to hang out with all the boys and do whatever I wanted to do and go to the parties and all the other thing. And people was like, well, how do you have a 3.6 or 3.8, um, uh, um, you know, a rating in a grade point average, and you still hanging out with you hanging out having a good time. Well, my thing was that I wanted to experience life. And so after I did advertising for years and did advertising for years, broke records, did the Black Business Expo. My grandmother brought to me. I did that. Did tons of speaking on advertising and all of these things. And I retired at 45. And when I retired because I set up in my life to say that I was going to either do art till I'm 45, or I was going to do business till I'm 45. Either way, I was going to retire at 45 and do whatever I wanted to do. And so I retired at 45 and I started drawing. I started just doing art. And I had an art collector about 10 years ago he bought a piece of my work for about $7,000. And we were on the phone. It was a Sunday morning. We was on the phone, and he said, who is the living artist making the most money in art? And this was a conversation that we were having after we talk about other Black artists like Basquiat, Otana, Wings, a lot of these artists. And we was having this conversation, and I said to him that the artist that I thought was making the most money was the Kendi Wiley, who had recently, the guy who did the Barack Obama portrait, and he was in California, and we saw a lot of information about him, and I thought he was the guy. And my art collector at that moment said, you don't know nothing. Because he was asking me, and I was just talking about the Kendi Wilder like he was the guy. Because I
Right.
thought I knew what I thought I knew. And he said, you don't know nothing. And he hung up. Now, for many people, you would think that getting hung up by one of your collectors was just something that just happened. But for me, I took it as I didn't know something that he knew, and he was not happy that I didn't know because he's spending money with me. And so at that moment, I got on the internet and I scoured the internet because I'm a research guy. And I found out who was the number one artist, living artist. And that guy was Mark Bradford. And
Mm.
so I found him. I studied him from 7:30 in the morning to 7 o'clock at night when I got my call from Gerald, who was the art collector, to ask me the question who it was. But at 5 o'clock, when I got to 5 o'clock, I paused and I sat down and I started to cry. And the reason that I started to cry was because I looked at his career and I looked at what he did and I looked at how he moved from being an artist to being the top artist in the world. And his paintings go for $12 million a painting. And
Wow.
that that statement and that thought of him making a piece of art and earning $12 million from that piece of art made me cry. And it made me cry because I was told that I was going to be a starving artist. I was told that, being an art, I couldn't make it. Even though I was an art scholarship, this is what I was told as a young man. And then as an older man, I'm looking at what the possibility is in art. And I didn't cry because I was sad. I just cried because I felt like I was betrayed as an artist at that moment. And so, what I wanted to say to all of you artists out there is you must follow your destiny. The golden egg, you're the goose. The golden eggs are in your hands. And that's where the gold is. You have to follow your legacy and follow your dream and continue to draw. Now, mind you, I still sell my work, and I still earn a good living with my art. But you have to also sit there and think if this is, and I don't like the word if, when you spend your time with your talent will make a way for you. As I've grown and as I talked to Gerald and we had that conversation, and he said the reason that he asked the question is because he had watched me as an artist grow and he wanted to know, you know, did I know where my real destiny lied? Not where my destiny is, but where it really lied, because he really believes that, I'm a pretty good artist.
Hmm. That's excellent. That's excellent. And I can't even begin to tell you how many stereotypes that have perpetuated. Well, do you want to be a high-tech money-making person or do you want to be a starving artist? Because you want to
That,
go into
yeah,
self.
and that piece right there, what you just said, you know, I want artists to think about this for just a moment. Just a
Hmm.
moment. Just a moment. If you drew on paper a piece of artwork and you charge $1, just $1 for that piece of artwork, okay? And you did 10 pieces of work a day times 365 days, how much money would that be in your back pocket?
There you go.
$1, one piece of artwork. Okay, let's just say it's 24 hours in a day. And I always talk about duplication and how you duplicate yourself to get to millions. If you think about it for a moment, your art truly is currency. Think about it for a moment. If you drew just one little piece of paper and you charge $10 a piece and you did 10 pieces, that's $100 that you've made. And then you take that $100 a day, $100 a day times 365, how much money is that a year? We don't think about how powerful numbers are with what we do as artists. Because many times we get into this space of, I'm just creating art. That's all I'm doing. I'm just creating the art. I'm not selling the art. I'm just creating the art. But if in fact you took the time out and sold your art at whatever price you want to sell it at, no matter what you sold it at, you wouldn't be a starving artist.
That's right.
You
I
would
love it. I
you would
absolutely.
not be a starving, even though if you look at what goes on not only in America, the beautiful, but all around the country, everybody talks about artists being starving artists, but it's the creative mind that makes the millions. It's the
That's right.
creative mind that makes the millions. So if you took the time out, and I just want to say this to all the artists, I have no regret. you know, because I've had a great life. I had a good time doing what I'm doing. But if you are an artist and you like to dabble, you like to sketch, you like to do it and get it in front of your fans because your fans are sitting around waiting for your work. And what we are not told is that we have a fan base. The key to having a fan base is finding that fan base. And once you find the fan base, the rest is easy. Do you even think that you can't be an artist because somebody says you can't be an artist? You know, somebody says you're going to be a star. You have to believe that what you're doing is the most incredible thing that you're doing with your life and your time. And when you believe that, the doors fly wide open because there's no barrier there. As you see my hands, I have paint on my hands because I'm doing this interview with you, and I'm going to leave right now and go and do a 40 and work on a 47-foot mural that's going to be an iconic mural in my lifetime on the planet. You notice what I said. I didn't say in your lifetime. I didn't say in the art collectors of the world's lifetime. I say in my lifetime. And what I said to the collector as I'm doing the piece of work, that this piece that I'm doing is a link in the chain of work that I've done all of my life. And when you do that and you live in the now and the happiness of the today, then nothing really matters. You're rich. You're rich. You're rich.
I love it. I know that we're way past an hour, and I would love to leave that as the last word, but I can't. So I'm going to ask you this last question, which is, where do you want to take your art in terms of the next level, in terms of the future? What is it that you're holding?
You know,
if you want to share.
I'm smiling because we're planning a activity. We're planning a museum tour to Africa. We're planning on doing 9 museums in Africa, 9 African business or African art shows in arenas in Africa. And we're planning on 9 what I'm going to call the 9, instead of 9, the 9th journey of art. And what we're doing with that is we're going to be looking for artists like myself in nations in Africa who are artists who have been doing the work. And one of the things that we're planning to do is to create museums for artists who are not revered or known in the mainstream, but are known in their nations. Here in North Carolina, by virtue of my great grandfather starting a museum here for me as a child, we want to create museums in 9 nations in Africa that revere artists who have done great work, who people don't know about. And one of the reasons is for the idea of artists like Ernie Barnes, who's a great artist, but there is no museum here in North America for Ernie Barnes. His works in galleries, but there's no museum for young people to go to that museum and experience the Ernie Barnes, the Ernie Barnes experience, pieces that he did when he was in high school all the way to now. No, even though he's passed and he's gone on, there's no Romare Bearden museum. There is no Charles White museum. Why isn't there museums for Black artists who have gone on before, or living artists who are here now? There's no Belisa Butler Museum. There's no Mark Bradford Museum. There's no Dikembe Wiley Museum. These are artists that are living now, living legends now. There is no museum for them. There's a Van Gogh museum. There's a Michelangelo museum. There are Degas museums. There are museums for other artists around the world. We don't have artists dedicated to our Black artists. And the museum tour that we're working on is a museum tour, not only to go to museums in Africa, not only to educate Africans and Americans as Africans in a space together at the art expo that we're planning for kids and universities. Where are our great artists who have given art to the world? Where are their museums? And we want to do that. We are planning on doing that in Africa first and then coming back to North America. And we're starting that with the Eric Kelly Museum as being a boilerplate for these other artists all over the world, for them to see that this is something that is not only needed, this is something that has to happen for us to revere our artists who are going on before us and who are living today. And so that's kind of what we're going to be doing. We will do an interview about that as we get ready for this year, as the trip is going to be at the end of this year. And I'd like to go in detail of all the places that we plan on going. I like to do the detail of what this project is all about. And that's going to take, and I'm smiling, that's going to take a more than an hour also, because, you know, we take our time on the planet and we do so many great things as people. Sometimes we don't look at how we can serve. And I want to serve the art community in a way that many people are not looking at how we serve. Because when I found out about Mark Bradford as the $12 million artist, the reason for tears was because I spent my life trying to be a basketball player, football player, run track, spent my life being a car salesman, learning how to sell so that I could earn some money. I spent my life being a singer or being a dancer, looking for that moment where I could break through, where I could become, you know, this energy that I wanted to become. While doing all of those things and wondering how could I be who I wanted to be, I didn't look inside and see what I was already given that would propel me to that space. And so with that idea, I don't want to be the guy who's still sitting around looking to be that guy. I want to be a human being on this planet working to showcase other artists who are more powerful if they only knew what I knew in terms of how to become or how to showcase that work. And that is what I'm doing right now. I'm looking, how can I serve humanity with Black artists all over the world to show their work to the world, because they have done the work. Many people don't do the work. Many people show up and they don't have a breath of work, but they've done the work. But we don't have our young people being able to see them in the light of the work that they've done.
I love this. And we are going to leave it there because that was perfect. And I say perfect because not only are you standing in the truth of the fact that artists and their work hasn't been seen the way it should be seen, and that we don't have anything dedicated to us as it pertains to our artwork. I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm scanning because I've traveled this world and I go to museums and I go and we don't. But the other thing that is the gift here is that you're shattering the statement that has carried out throughout my lifetime and probably even before, which is the starving artist. Which is the artist. If you're going to go into art, you're not going to make any money. If you're going to go into art, this. If you're going to go into art, that. And you're going to give up this beauty in life that you could have if you did something else. And then the whole thing is that the first thing that they want to take away is our creativity and the art in schools, and to re-energize that by a museum tour is phenomenal.
And
So
I know it's time to go, but I would be remiss if I wouldn't say to your audience, I hope y'all are enjoying the work that's behind me. It's some of my work. You can go to the Eric Kelly Museum .org online and see some more of my work. I want you to understand one thing, and I definitely want to say thank you for allowing me to come on your show and be a part of your legacy as you continue to build on the strengths of the network that you have in place. Thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing me to be here. But as I said, I would be remiss if I didn't invite people to come and check out the Eric Kelly Museum. The story that we talked about is there. You can read it. And for those artists who want to be on this tour with us, please reach out to me at Eric Kelly 45 at Gmail, as this tour is going to be to 9 museums with nine expos, with 9 new museums created in these 9 nations. And so that to me is a noteworthy occasion. And again, I want to thank you so very much for letting me go overtime, as we overtime, overtime, overtime,
overtime,
overtime.
overtime.
Sometimes you got to go into overtime just to be victorious. And I hope that I've shared some keys, shared some knowledge, and shared some wisdom to your audience. And as we look to the future, I want you to understand that I love you as a sister from a brother. I love your programming. I love what you do. And I look forward to meeting you, as I'm sure that you're going to be on the tour to the 9 nations across Africa. And
You
again,
know I wouldn't miss it. You
yes.
know I am not going to miss that.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
So thank you so very much for allowing me to be here. And as I look at my day, and as you look at your day, continue to do what you do well. And that's to be successful, not only in living, but be successful in doing what you do to live out your legacy as a great person on this planet.
Thank you so, so much. That is Dr. Eric Kelly. And by the way, I would be remiss if you don't take the time to look at this man's artwork. You're missing a huge amount, because that beautiful piece behind him is just a small representation of the plethora of work that he brings to bear and to fruition. So take the time, go to Eric Kelly Museum, the third, Eric Kelly, the third museum, and take the time and do the work and see the work. This has been another episode of The Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And I want to thank Dr. Eric Kelly for taking his time, for sharing his heart, and for being a part of our program. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Look for more information on the tour. Reach out to Dr. Eric Kelly III. He wouldn't have said to do it unless he meant it. I've seen it. I've observed it. He means what he means, and he does what he says. And so thank you, Dr. Eric Kelly. Just say goodbye to our audience, and we're good.
And as I always say, at the end of my show, what you're looking for is looking for you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.